Hello, in the following video I'll show you how to use JavaScript frameworks such as Vue, React, or Svelte in a Shopify theme with Liquid. The example in this video will be done using React, but it's roughly the same idea for other frameworks. And yes, React is technically a library, but to keep things simple in this video, I'll refer to it as a framework on the same line as Vue, Svelte, and others, because the way you'll use them in a Liquid theme is pretty much identical. The reason I'm making this video is because when you're building a Liquid store, there are some legitimate instances where you may need to reach for a JavaScript framework. For example, if you needed to reuse a component you've built for another project, which was made using a framework, or perhaps you need to install a third-party library that's only available in that framework's ecosystem, such as Framer Motion for React, because one of the sections you've been asked to create has very complex animations that would be difficult to create and maintain otherwise. Or perhaps simply because the complexity of a section goes beyond what you and your team will feel comfortable with coding in vanilla JavaScript. For all those instances, there's Escape Hatch to include a JavaScript framework if that's really what you need. That being said, I refer to this as Escape Hatch because it's not something you should read out for often, as JavaScript frameworks come with a performance overhead. Some more than others, but generally speaking, they will add additional JavaScript to your site that needs to be downloaded, parsed, and executed. So if you're not careful, you might end up deteriorating the performance of your store, especially for customers who are visiting your store from a slower device. In those instances, if the store takes too long to load, they might simply leave the page and you'll be missing on that potential sale. So all that is to say that if you can't refrain from using a framework and instead go with regular JavaScript, that can end up being better for your store's customers. And after mentioning all of that, let's get started. Okay, so I had done running locally over here with the dev server open here. If you're not sure how to create that dev server or how to run a theme locally, check the video I have about this, as you should be familiar with this concept at this point. But anyways, let's go over here to the body and let's render a snippet, framework snippet, for example, and let's save this. And now let's create it over here. Framework snippet liquid. For now, let's just say framework. And let's see if this renders. There it is. So let's start working over here. To include the framework, we are going to be using Vite. In case you're not familiar with it, Vite is a front-end development tool that, among other things, compiles framework code into JavaScript that can be executed by the browser. As when you write code for a component in React, for example, your browser can't understand that. There needs to be an intermediary tool that takes that file and converts it to regular JavaScript, and in this case, that tool will be Vite. Now I'm going to open another console in this directory, and I'm going to run npm init Vite. I'm going to put a dot here, so it initializes everything in this folder. And then I'm going to select ignore files and continue because I don't want it to delete anything in this folder. Then here I'm going to select the framework that I want to use. In this case, I'm going to select React, but you can select whichever one you want. As a matter of fact, React might be a better option because it has a lighter footprint while sharing pretty much the same APIs as React. But to keep this simple, I'm just going to pick React here. And you can select TypeScript, you can select JavaScript, both will work fine with Shopify for the setup that we are going to have. I'm just going to pick TypeScript. And now I'm going to run npm install. You are going to see here that we are already having a couple of errors. We are going to fix that in a moment. I'll be back once this finishes installing. Now let's add another file here, .shopifyignore. This is a file to tell Shopify CLI to ignore certain files that we know we need, but that Shopify doesn't recognize. For example, package.json, readme, tsconfig, and all of that are files that would produce errors such as this. And also, if we run Shopify theme pool, Shopify will delete them. To avoid all of that, let's just add everything that we just added to this file. So the src folder, the public folder, .eslint rc.cjs, .gitignore, index.html, package log.json, package.json, readme.md, tsconfig.json, tsconfig.node.json and vite.config.ts. If I save this and I run Shopify theme dev again, you're going to see that I'm not going to get errors anymore because I now have all of these files in this directory, in this listed in this Shopify ignore file. Next, let's clean the files we don't need. I don't need this Vite logo from here. And in src, I don't need the React logo. This app.css and this index.css are not needed because we are going to keep the CSS in the assets directory over here instead of having some CSS there and some CSS here, as that will be inconsistent. Then in main.ts, I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to, in app.ts, remove this, and remove this. And for now, I'm just going to render here, hello from React. Next, we are going to be updating the Vite configuration. We are going to update the build configuration instead of the dev configuration or the server configuration because we need this to produce an output, and the build command produces an output. To make it watch as if it was a dev server, we are going to just add the watch property over here as an empty object. That should be enough for it to watch and behave as a dev server, in the sense that whenever I save a file over here, it will precompile. Next, I'm going to say product options, and in the input, here I'm going to add the name of the file. So let's say this will be counter. And over here, I have to add the path of that file. So src main.tsx, and the output, this will be in the assets directory because for Shopify, we need it to always be here. Then the entry file names, we are going to say name.js. For the chunk file names, we're going to also say name.js. And for the asset file names, in case there are assets, we are going to say name.ext. And we can actually prefix all of this with Vite so we know right away which files have been compiled from Vite and which are just regular JavaScript files that we added ourselves. Lastly, we have to add another property over here, which is empty out there. By default, this is true. And what this will do is that it will clear all the files over here in the output directory, which is assets. So it will delete everything before compiling. We don't want it to do that. So we are just going to make this false. If now I run npm from build, let's see, I have a couple of errors here. That is because I'm not using this. So I'm just going to comment this for now. And here we have it. Here you can see that we got the file compiled and it is in the assets directory. Over here at the very end, we have vite counter.js. If we now open this file over here, you're going to see what I meant at the beginning when I said that JavaScript frameworks add a lot of overhead. All of this is just for this very small component that I have over here. But anyways, let's see how we can now include this. So let's go to framework snippet. And over here, I'm going to say a script. src will be vite counter.js asset URL. And let's load this deferred. And if I go to my browser and I refresh this page, nothing is showing. And the reason for that is because if we go to main.tsx, we can see here that it is expecting there to be a document with an ID of root, and that is where it will inject this component. So let's add that. So it's going to add a div over here with an ID of root. And if I refresh here, you can see hello from React. And now I can go to this file and add back the counter. So let's add a button over here. Counter is count, and on click, this is going to do set count, count, count plus 1. You can see over here, I have counter is 0, and as I click on this is getting updated, and all of this is this React code getting compiled in this Vite counter and then being rendered over here in my Liquid theme. Now, if I open here the developer tools and go to network and filter by JavaScript, if I do a hard refresh of the page and then sort this by file size, you're going to see that this vitcounter.js is the largest JavaScript file being downloaded by far at 142 kilobytes. Then here I have the theme, but now deployed in Shopify. So here you can see you're previewing done, which is the live theme over here. I went ahead and deployed this. And if I open the developer tools, go to the same network tab, filter by JavaScript, when I refresh this and filter by file size, you can see that the file size here is actually smaller, but the functionality here is the same. However, now I have 44 kilobytes. The reason for that is because Shopify is compressing all of the JavaScript files that it is serving from their platform. Over here, you can see in the documentation that they are using Brotli or gzip, depending on what they can use at the moment for that particular browser. But while that reduces the amount of JavaScript that goes through the network, once that file is downloaded, it will be decompressed back to its original form by the browser so it can execute it. So if the file is large, it will still negatively impact slow devices, as they will still need to execute the same amount of JavaScript. Now let's see how we can have more than one component and make them independent to one another. If you see here in main.tsx, to render the counter, I'm importing it from its file and putting it over here. Counter will be this app.tsx. As a matter of fact, let's just change the name over here to make this clearer. But let's say that I have more components, such as an add to cart button component. If I import it in this file, I can render that independently by copying this same structure of React DOM.createRoot and pasting it over here, maybe targeting a different element with another ID, so it renders in a different node in the HTML element tree. But that will mean that both components will be compiled into the same file. And sure, in this case, these are small components, so it doesn't matter that much. But if you have a large component or component that import large libraries, then separating each component into its own file so it is included only when it is needed becomes more critical. This approach I just described is similar to what this DOM theme is doing, where you can see that the different components that the theme has are separated each into their own file instead of compiling everything into a large JavaScript file. That way, the customer will only download the JavaScript that they need for the page they are in. And keep in mind that this theme, Dawn, has been developed by Shopify, so it is following the best practices for this platform. So after saying all of that, let's over here create a new folder, counter, and let's put all of this inside counter. And then let's create another folder, add to cart button, and we'll copy this and create another main.tsx file and paste it over here. Now I'm going to have add to cart button.tsx. This will export and add to cart button component. And for now, this will just return a button that says add to cart. Now here, I'm going to say that this is imported from add to cart button. And from here, I'm going to be importing add to cart button and rendering this here. And let's say that here we're going to target add to cart. Now, you can see here that I'm already having issues compiling this, and that's because we have to now update this file. Counter is no longer in src main.tsx, but instead in src counter main.tsx. And then we have also add, let's actually do this like this. In the snake case, add to cart button. And we are going to say here src add to cart button main.tsx. If I save this and run npm run build again, you're going to see that now I have my files over here, vite add to cart.js, let's expand this a little, and vite counter.js. But we also have this vite client.js. We are going to see in a moment what this is, but for now you can see that this is the code for the button, and this is the code for the counter. So why am I getting this third JavaScript file if over here in my vite.config.ts I'm not specifying client anywhere? So where is that file coming from? Well, if I click on this and go through the code, this looks similar to what we saw earlier in the video. As a matter of fact, you can see that vite-counter.js is now significantly smaller. That is because the code that is just including the framework, which is React, got separated into this vite-client.js because both vite-counter.js and vite-add-to-cart-button.js are using it. Therefore, it is going to import this file both here and here to not have to repeat the code for React in both places. And what that means for us is that now the code for the page here got broken, because if I go to framework snippet.liquid, I'm only importing vite-counter.js, but the React code is not imported anywhere. So if I go to the console here, I'm going to see an error. In this case, I'm trying to use an import statement outside of a module. That import statement is to import React, or in this case, the way it got named, which is vite client. I'm going to just say vite client.js asset URL and a script. I'm going to use the for here as well because the for ensures that they are imported in the same order that I specify here. If I use async, there might be a chance that vite-counter.js is imported or downloaded first at vite-client.js, so it will try to import vite-client before this file downloads and error out. Anyways, if I save this and refresh, we're going to see that we are still getting errors, and that is because to use export and import, I have to use type module. So here, this needs to be a module, and here, this also needs to be a module. If I save this, now I get hello from React, and my counter is working again. And now let's include the add to cart button. So I'm going to say div id add to cart button. And I have to also do this script here, vite add to cart button.js. And I have here my counter, and then I have here my add to cart button, which at the moment is doing nothing, but it is being rendered entirely by React. Now let's make the React code interact with the rest of the code in the store, because so far we've only kept the React code interacting with code that was written there. For example, in the counter here, everything is in this file, but it is not interacting with anything else outside of this file. For the add to cart button, we are going to want to do something different. We are going to want to pass the data variant ID, which will contain the variant ID of the product we want to add to the cart, and also data product title. For now, let's just say product, and let's see how we can receive this in React. So for the add to cart button, I'm going to say, I'm going to copy this, and let's put this in a constant, add to cart root, copy this, and if add to cart root, if it finds an add to cart root with this query selector, then I'm going to get const variant ID will be equal to add to cart root the dataset dot variant ID. Or you can also do a get attribute and get data variant ID. Both will work the same way. So anyways, I'm going to say here add to cart root, and here, let's say that I'm going to receive a prop here variant ID, which will be, let's make this number, and variant ID here. And also, let's receive product title. This will be a string. And here I'm going to say product title. For now, let's just render here the product title. Let's just console.log the variant ID. And from here now, we are expecting those two props. So I'm going to say product title is equal to add to cart root dataset product title. Now, if variant ID and product title, then that's when we are going to render this. So I'm going to pass variant ID will be equal to number.parseInt variant ID, and product title will be equal to product title. Let's save this, and let's see what we have. And this is not rendering because the variant ID over here is empty. Let's fix this. Let's just pass, for now, 1. And here I see add product card. I should have a space over here. And that looks better. It says add product to cart because the name of the product that I specified here is this one. But now let's make this more dynamic. So if template.name is equal to product, we are going to render that. And let's go to a product page, such as this one. I say add product to cards, but I actually can say now product.title because this will only be rendered in product pages. And I can also make this conditional. Do not include it unless I need it. So here I see add the name of this product to the cart. But if I go to the home page, this add to cart button is not shown, and I can go to a different product, and the button's text will be updated to this product's title. Now let's make the button functional because right now it is not doing anything. The first step is to put here the actual variant ID. In this case, I'm just going to add the first available variant ID. So first available variant.id. And the next thing I'm going to do is in settings data.json, for this theme, I'm going to change the cart type to drawer. So I can have the cart drawer over here to show the product after it is being added. Now let's go to over here at the cart button.tsx. And the next thing we're going to do is create a function, async function, add to cart. And I'm going to call the function over here. So on click, this will call add to cart. From here, let's create add to cart request. This will be equal to await fetch cart.js. This is how you add a product to the cart with the Shopify Ajax API. The method will be a post request, and then in the headers, I need to pass content type application JSON. Then the body will be JSON.stringify items, and here I'm going to specify the items that I want to add. A quantity of 1 of this variant ID. And now over here, I'm just going to do response will be await add to cart request the JSON, and I'm just going to print this for now. Let's see if this works. So I get the items over here. I don't see any errors. So if I refresh the page, I should have my item in the cart. Now let's improve this by opening the cart and updating it after I click on this button instead of having to refresh the page. This step that I'm going to show you now will change depending on the theme you're working on. In the case of DOM, the way you interact with the cart is like this. So you do const cart drawer. I'm going to type this as any, but if I was working on a real theme, I would do something more robust for this, but for now this will do. So document the query selector cart drawer because this is a custom element. Now here I'm going to do sections will be equal to cart drawer dot get sections to render dot map section, and from here I'm going to get section.id. Let me also make this any for now. Now, where did I get this code from? Why it is like this? If I go to cartdrawer.js, which is the code controlling the drawer, you can see that it is defining a cart drawer element, which if I open this, you can see it over here, cart drawer. This is controlled by all of this. And if I get the sections to render, it will return this array with the IDs of the sections that should be re-rendered to update the cart. These sections will be updated by using the Shopify section rendering API. So basically, this request accepts an optional parameter of sections with an array of IDs for the sections to be re-rendered. Let's refresh the page and let's see the response, and this will be clearer. So here in the response, I get sections, and this is the HTML with the updated cart. And the way of now re-rendering the cart is by simply doing cart drawer dot render contents response, because if I go to cart drawer over here, there is a render contents method that gets the state and re-renders the cart based on that. So if I refresh the page now and add an item to the cart, you can see that I now have 3 items. Previously I had 2. This cart bubble also got updated because among the sections that get updated is both the cart drawer and the cart icon bubble. I can once again add another one. You can see that now I have 4, and the bubble also get updated to have 4. So that's how you receive data and interact with other components or elements in the page from the framework, in this case from React. We can also emit custom data from here if we wanted to. For example, let's look for custom event over here. Let's copy this. And let's say that we wanted to emit an event when we add a product to the cart. So in this case, I'm going to say const root will be equal to, let's copy over here this ID. Let's do document dot query selector this, and let's say that we are going to emit this from root. And in this case, the detail, which is the data, we can just say ID is going to be variant ID. We're going to type this as any. No, let's not type this as any. Let's just say if root, which this should always be true because we are rendering this inside of root. But anyways, we are confirming this over here that root exists. And now what I can do is document dot get element by ID. I get this, and I can then add an event listener for the name of the event should be product added. So I'm going to save this. and paste this here. And then I'm going to get the event over here. I'm just going to console.log the detail to get the ID. And now if I add this over here, you can see that this is being printed from the Vite add to cart button.js, but this over here is from this listener. I'm getting the ID. So this is how different components and JavaScript code from the same theme can interact with this add to cart button or any other element or component you create within React or the framework you selected. Earlier in the video, I mentioned we will go over how to mitigate some of the performance impact that loading a JavaScript framework might have in the store. The way we'll do this is with lazy loading. Now, this is not a one-size-fits-all solution, and the actual solution for you will depend exactly on where this component is rendered, how the customer is supposed to interact with it, how critical is it for the customer journey, and so on. So what I'll show you now is just a starting point that you'll likely have to adjust for your situation. The first thing we'll do is to move this snippet to the bottom of the page. So let's say right above the footer, over here. This renders it after everything else, but right above the footer. Now, what we are going to do is to load that only when the customer is scrolling nearby this. So let's go over here and let's start by giving this an ID. Actually, let's wrap everything in a div. And let's give this an ID. Framework snippet, for example. Now, we are going to add here a script. And we are going to put all of this in a comment. We are going to now create a scripts array that will contain the source for these scripts. So this over here and this over here. As these two are always loaded, I'm going to add it directly in the array. But then if template, the name is product, then I'm going to do a scripts dot push, and I'm going to copy this from here and paste it here. Let's see if this is working. So let's run this. It says over here that script is not defined. Let's see where I'm using just script over here. And here we have the three scripts. Now we are going to add them with an intersection observer once the customer is scrolling to the bottom of the page. Now I'm going to do const observer will be equal to new intersection observer. This will receive the entries and the observer itself. And we are going to set a threshold of 1, so the element needs to be completely visible. Then I'm going to say if the first entry is intersecting, I'm going to do for const script of scripts. So for every script in that array, I'm going to create a script element with document.create element script. And then I'll do set attribute. And I'm going to add all the attributes that I've said before. So type will be module. And I'm going to paste this 2 more times. src will be the script directly. And then over here, the fur will be just the fur. And I'm going to do document.body parent child script element. And finally, I'm going to do observer.disconnect. And let's print over here scripts added. And now we have to add this to the page. So I'm going to do observer.observe. And I'm going to get this ID over here. Do document dot query selector, and I'm going to get this from here. And this script actually should be moved outside of the section or outside of this div. And let's see what we get in the page. So if I scroll down, I get here scripts added. But yes, the scripts added is being loaded from the beginning, and that is because this section, even though it doesn't look like it, this section is also loaded after the page initially loads. So if I do a hard refresh here, you're going to see that for a brief second, framework in that section is in the viewport, so the intersection observer detects it. So this page was a bad example to put this in, but let's go to the home page. And you're going to see here in the console tab, scripts added is not being shown. But if I scroll down, now I get scripts added and I get this counter. So this is being effectively lazy loaded. And of course, we can confirm this too from the network tab. So over here, if I go to JavaScript and I do a hard refresh of the page, we are going to see that if I look for Vite, nothing is showing. But as I scroll down the page, over here, as soon as it says scripts loaded, we are getting all of this. And there is a mistake here. We are loading client twice. That's because we shouldn't have included client over here, because all of these components are manually importing Vite client within themselves. So if I remove that from there and refresh the page, I should still be getting my counter, which is working. And if I go to a product page, such as this one, Vite counter is just loaded once by the first component of this that imports it. So I can still use my counter and I can use this at the cart bottom just fine. And that's a good example of why you should always check your network tab when you are doing things like this. And before closing the video, let me quickly mention that if what you're looking for falls more into the line of building the whole store using a JavaScript framework instead of Liquid, Shopify has Hydrogen, a React framework that's integrated with the Shopify platform. There's also the option to build the store in a framework of your choosing by using Shopify's headless API. That way, Shopify will manage the backend of your store and you are free to build the frontend in any technology you want. I'll leave links to the documentation of both in the video description. And that's it for this video. If you found it useful, remember to like and subscribe for more Shopify related content, and I'll see you all in the next one.